Ladies and gentlemen, welcome for our second launch of the year from the Guiana Space Center, the first with Soyuz. For today's mission, Soyuz is set to deliver 2 Galileo satellites manufactured by OHB System into a circular medium Earth orbit at an altitude of 23,522 kilometers and inclined at 55 degrees above the equator. Soyuz is scheduled to lift off this evening at 6 hours 46 minutes local time. From liftoff until separation, the elapsed time will be approximately 3 hours and 48 minutes. Both satellites will be released simultaneously. Tonight's mission is the fourth to be performed here in Kourou for Galileo constellation deployment. Galileo is a flagship program of European space endeavor in the field of global positioning, navigation and timing. Arianespace is proud to contribute to European Union's ambition to achieve autonomy in such a strategic area. We are very grateful to our customers, the European Commission and the European Space Agency, for their continuous trust in our launch systems. Tonight's mission also marks the return to flight for Galileo of our medium-sized vehicle following the anomalous injection which occurred on August 22nd last year. Arianespace and its partner Roscosmos have set up parallel and independent inquiry commissions which both came up with a common set of corrective actions to be implemented in order to restore flight worthiness. My deepest gratitude thus goes to all the individuals who took part in these investigations and action plan, which has already allowed a successful launch last December with Soyuz from the CSG. But our 11th Soyuz to be launched from French Guiana is now being readied for liftoff. So enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome. We are live at the Guiana Space Center for the launch of the next 2 satellites in Europe's satellite navigation system. It's called Galileo. And there they are inside the Soyuz launch vehicle on the pad, going through the final preparations for tonight's launch. We're scheduled to lift off in just over 16 minutes. You can see the countdown. There it is on the top right-hand side of your screen. And the status panels are green. That's a good sign. That means that we are go for launch. This is the mission control building. We are about 20 kilometers from the pad, and here the operational teams in what we call the fishbowl, the glass area, are all focusing very hard at this point before launch. So let's take a little look at our Soyuz vehicle herself. She's a strong and reliable workhorse. She's made of 4 sections, and we call those stages. The first section are the 4 boosters. Each one of those has its own engine. They burn for about 2 minutes, and they are attached to the central core stage, or the second stage. There it is. A mass at liftoff of just under 100 tons. The third stage there, nearly 28 tons. And then the fourth stage is the frigate upper stage. That's housing our passengers. Our 2 satellites are inside there as we speak. And there is the fairing protecting them, and if we were to cut it open, that's what we would see. It is indeed made of 2 halves. There they are, the 2 satellites, Galileo FOC M2 satellites, 7 and 8, manufactured by the prime contractor OHB. They're going to be in a medium Earth orbit, circular orbit. Number of different teams working here in mission control. This is one of them. This is the Flight Directorate, headed up by Stefan Israel. These are the Arianespace top management. They take all the final decisions in the case of unplanned situations, and we have joint Russian and European teams working side by side here, and teams across the base report to them directly in real time. Galileo is very much a flagship program for Europe. We're launching 30 satellites, and Arianespace is launching all of those. We've launched the first 6, now we're launching the 7th and 8th.
Bonsoir, nous sommes réunis.
Good evening. Here we are again for the launch of the 2 Galileo satellites.
Nous étions quittés au mois d'août.
In August, we were left with a problem on the Soyuz launcher.
Du lanceur Soyuz. Depuis,
Since then, the anomaly on the launcher has been understood.
Le lanceur
Soyuz has flown with success several times, so the launcher is ready. As for the 2 satellites which are going tonight, they took advantage of the test we could make on the satellites launched in August.
Très bien. Et donc,
These 2 satellites are working correctly, and the satellites we launched tonight have been checked on the ground and are also ready to go.
sont prêts au lancement. Donc, tout est,
So all is green
pour un lancement,
for the launch of the 2 Galileo satellites,
satellite Galileo.
which will allow us to start again the deployment of the constellation at the rhythm of the production, 2 satellites every 3 months.
So that was the Director General of the European Space Agency. He's in charge of the entire Space Agency. The guy who's in charge of navigation is joining me now, Didier Febvre, the Director of Navigation. I'm very grateful to you for coming to the floor, Didier. We heard there about the anomaly in the previous flight, but the fact that we're here today is an excellent sign, and it means that everything's sorted out, I presume.
Okay. Good evening. If we are here today, it's because we are very confident for the launch today. After the anomaly in August, Arianespace, together with industry, with colleagues from all colleagues in Europe, have initiated a lot of activities to make sure that the anomaly is understood, that the problem is solved. It is the case today. In the meantime, we have already used 2 satellites to make sure that they can be tested and confirm that they are ready for launch today. So at this very moment, we know that satellite is okay, because we have tested the 2 equivalent satellites, and we know that the launcher is ready. So we are very confident.
And
it's a good sign.
It's a very good sign, and the teams have obviously worked incredibly hard to bring us to today with an excellent rescue mission. Let's just explain to everybody that there are several different satellite navigation networks orbiting our planet. The Americans have GPS, of course, which we've all heard of. The Chinese have Compass, and the Russians have their version, which is called GLONASS. We're going to get our own European version. Why is it so important for us to have Galileo?
As you say, if the space powers have navigation systems, because it's important. It's important for a lot of applications, it's important for a lot of technology, and Europe cannot be excluded. We in Europe, we are a technological power, and we have access to this kind of thing. We cannot be excluded. That's why Europe has decided years ago to develop its own system. But this system is not in competition with the GPS. This system is fully interoperable with GPS, meaning that Europe and the US system will contribute to help and improve the services delivered to the users.
So it's actually complementing GPS in the short term?
Exactly. We develop it in an autonomous manner. We can exploit and operate it in an autonomous manner. But for the users, for the services, GPS and Galileo are complementary.
So let's just talk about the different phases, because you're building the constellation step by step. As we said earlier, we will have 30 satellites at the end of it all. We've already launched 6. Today we're launching numbers 7 and 8. Talk us through the validation phase and the operational phase.
As you said, we prepared the...
Do you know, I'm just going to stop you there because we're coming up to an important moment here in the flight.
Top. Début de la séquence finale lanceur.
An important moment there in the countdown. We're going into the final launch sequence, and that was the range operations manager there, Joël Egalji, who is of course a colleague of yours. We were talking about the operational phase that we're now in.
Okay. So we started the deployment with 4 AUV satellites in orbit validation. It was very important to demonstrate that the system is good, it works well, the system is sound, and we have demonstrated it with an event culminating in March 13, which was the first positioning done with European-only means. 4 European satellites launched from European territory, managed by European ground segment in Fucino and Oberpfaffenhofen, where the control centers are. And we have demonstrated with a high level of performance that Galileo can deliver high level of performances for positioning and timing. This was done in 13, and confirming that the system is sound. Now we are in the deployment phase, meaning that we have not to go with 4 satellites, but reaching 30 satellites by the end of the decade. We started with the 2 first FOC satellites in August, with the Anomaly, which is known. And now we start, I hope, the routine phase, where we can produce satellites in Bremen, in the premises of OHB. We can test the satellites in ESTEC, in the ESA center. We can launch from Kourou, operate from space, and have step by step a complete constellation by the end of the decade.
So, Didier, we are 9 minutes to launch. What's going through your mind right now?
9 minutes to launch. It's intense emotion. But what I would like to say that today, more than 1,000 persons are working for the same objective, to make a successful launch. People here in Kourou, people all around the world waiting for satellite. I would like to mention also the people in Toulouse, in the CNES Center, because they take care of satellite just after the separation. Arianespace delivers the baby, but the baby now is will be in the hands of the Toulouse Center. So 1,000 persons for one objective. It's emotion.
That's good teamwork. Didier, thank you very much indeed, Didier Fèvre, for joining us here on the floor. Our programme comes to you in French and in English tonight. In the French commentary box is Thierry Bouvard. And we're going to find out a little bit more now about the launch campaign. It's taken about 7 weeks to prepare. Once the different parts of the Soyuz vehicle arrived in French Guiana, they were transported to the Launch Vehicle Integration Building, the MIC, where the first 3 stages were assembled horizontally, starting with the 4 boosters which were strapped onto the second stage, followed by the integration of the third stage. Meanwhile, the 2 Galileo satellites arrived in Cayenne and were then transported to the payload processing facility at the Guiana Space Center. Teams performed a series of tests and checked the good health of the satellites in the utmost cleanliness before sending them for fueling operations. The satellites were then attached using a special dispenser before being transferred to the S3B buildings for integration with the upper stage. The whole stack was carefully encapsulated inside the protective case of the fairing to form what's known as the upper composite. The first 3 stages of the vehicle were transferred to the pad 4 days before launch. It was then raised to a vertical position inside the mobile gantry, which protects it and provides feed lines until it's retracted 1 hour before launch. The upper composite, that's the fairing with the satellites, frigate and the dispenser inside, was then hoisted on top of Soyuz and mated with the third stage. The fluid and electrical connections were then activated, along with the air conditioning inside the fairing. Many of these operations are overseen by the teams in the Launch Control Center, which is about 1 kilometre from the pad in a concrete bunker. We have Russian and European teams working alongside each other here. One of those is responsible for ground operations, and they're also coordinating with Mission Control for final authorization to launch. Another team is responsible for the flight readiness of the vehicle. They oversee all the operations from launch vehicle assembly to the moment of launch. The safeguarding team ensures that all operations are carried out according to strict rules guaranteeing the utmost safety at the base. And then we have another team, that's the CVI, or Immediate Visual Control. During the flight, the launcher sends information to the ground to tell us how it's progressing in real time, and the team receives that information and passes it to the Range Operations Manager here in Mission Control, who then announces the confirmations of the major events in the flight to everybody listening across the range. And that was Joël Egalgi, who we saw earlier announcing the -10, 20. I'm now in my commentary box. I'll be here for the rest of the flight. And joining me is somebody else from the European Space Agency, another navigation guy, Sylvain Lodo. Welcome, Sylvain.
Hey, good afternoon.
Sylvain, you're the Galileo ground segment manager. Talk to us about the ground segment.
Yes, in fact, all space systems have a space segment, with the satellites, and also a ground segment. So that includes, in our case, control rooms, where we monitor the satellites, facilities where we process the data we get from them, and also tracking stations all around the world.
We'll be seeing some of those tracking stations later. So we're 4 minutes and 18 seconds to launch. We're going to have various phases during our flight. Let's take a look at those.
Hi everybody, I'm here just to present you the main events of this launch VS11. 2 minutes after the liftoff, the jettisoning of the booster will take place. And then after 4 minutes there will be the fairing jettisoning. And just 1 minute after this fairing jettisoning there will be the cutoff of the block A and the ignition of the motor of the block I. During 4 minutes the block I will follow the course of injections in order to inject the frigate MT, which is the upper stage. Then the frigate MT will do its first boost during 30 minutes. And then there will be a very long cut phase of around 3 hours. And after that, the second boost will occur during only 4 minutes in order to circularize the orbit. And then the separation of the two Galileo spacecraft will take place.
Well, that's all to come, but right now we're just under 2 minutes to launch, and there's Soyuz on the pad. Can you see the big grey mast over there on the left-hand side? That's feeding what we call the umbilical lines, or the feed lines, taking information from the satellites to your teams on the ground, Sylvain.
Yes, you're right. The feed lines are being disconnected right now.
There we go. He's just announced that disconnection.
So now it means that we no longer get information from our spacecraft. And we can't see the lines anyway because they're inside the mast.
And they drop into a basket. There's also another mast below that, which we will see drop off just before launch, and that big grey mast will drop off just before launch. So watch out for that. A word about the ignition sequence on Soyuz. We have a system for checking the health of the engines before it leaves the pad, Sylvain.
Yes, you're right. So the engine on the 4 boosters and the core stage are all ignited 17 seconds before liftoff. And then thrust is gradually increased to check the engines if they are working fine in particular.
And then they slowly throttle up the engines to full thrust, and it's at that point that the vehicle then leaves the pad. Mission control. A couple of things just to run through again before launch. Just watch out for that mobile gantry withdrawing 45 seconds before. Then we get...
de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute.
Then the big grey mast. He's announcing...
Stop, à 0 moins 1 minute.
He's announcing 1 minute to launch. We are orbiting the 7th and 8th satellites in Europe's Galileo satellite navigation system for the European Union and the European Space Agency.
Yes, so best wishes to all the teams for this launch, all of our colleagues.
And to everybody, of course, at the ground stations. Let's sit and watch.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le début de la séquence d'allumage lanceur. Top, à 0 moins 20 secondes. Largage du MAVKM. Allumage triétage. À tous de DDO. Attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Et décollage. Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
Wow, always impressive. There she goes, hauling herself against the gravity of our planet, which of course is pulling us back down, making life possible here on Earth, but making it very difficult to leave. We're burning 5 engines, one on the main core stage, one on each
Les
of
attitudes du
those.
lanceur suivant les 3 axes sont nominales. Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
One on each of those boosters. He's telling us that everything's going according to plan. Sylvain, your next 2 satellites have taken off.
Yes, you're right. Now we are very pleased that we are off the ground, for sure. We still have a long journey ahead of us, nearly 4 hours, but it seems to be a very good start. Yeah.
Take a look at the bottom of the screen. You can see on the left the altitude. We're 16 kilometers above the
Les
Earth,
paramètres de structure du lanceur sont nominaux.
and our cameras have picked up more images there of Soyuz as it hurtles across the sky. If we're lucky, we might even see the boosters falling away in about half a minute. At the bottom of the screen is the distance from the pad.
Les paramètres propulsifs sont conformes à l'attendu.
That's the distance if you were to draw a line along the Earth, and on the right-hand side, the speed. We can hear the launcher as it flies over, the delayed sound there. And this is the scheduled moment for the boosters to fall away. We don't need them anymore. They have done their job. They have burnt their propellant. And we can see superb images here from a previous
Séparation des
launch.
propulseurs, les blocs B, V, G, D.
And we have confirmation that the separation of the boosters has indeed occurred. So we're burning the main core stage now. Folk here call it the Block A, Sylvain.
Yes, you're right. It burns for just under 5 minutes. So it burns liquid oxygen and kerosene.
Little word about confirmations. You might have noticed that we get schedule events
Stabilisation correcte suite à la séparation des blocs.
and then slightly later we get the confirmation. That's because we are seeing key moments happening at the right time. But we get the confirmations of those milestones just fractionally later. That's perfectly normal.
Yeah, you're right, because it takes a little time for the information to get from the launcher to the range operations manager here in the Guiana Space Center. So that's because it goes via
Déroulement du
Moscow.
vol est nominal.
He calls out the confirmations once he gets them. And so what we are seeing are the milestones when they are scheduled to happen.
There at the front of the vehicle is the fairing. We saw it earlier. It's housing the satellites. They're inside there. It's got several jobs. Most notably, it's protecting the satellites from the rigors of the launch.
Yeah. So we are having, for instance, acoustic vibrations at liftoff, so very loud, friction. So the launcher is flying through the dense part of the atmosphere at very high speed. So it's very hot outside the fairing.
And that friction is dissipating now because if you look at the bottom of the screen, we're 114 kilometers above the Earth and we don't need the fairing anymore. So
Séparation des deux demi-coiffes.
it's just fallen away. We've had confirmation and we can now see your 2 babies.
Yes, yeah, we see them quite well. So we see the golden part there is a frégate. And then on
L'attitude
top,
du lanceur suivant ces 3 axes sont nominales.
you see our 2 satellites with the dispenser in the middle to hold them.
If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you can still see it there.
Ah, yes, correct. Then you see now we start to see the panel that will face Earth when it is in orbit. So you see the antennas.
Which
Yeah.
ones are the
Propulsion
antennas?
du bloc A est
The
nominale.
round part. The round part, there is the navigation antenna, the one which will broadcast navigation signals. And then as it turns, you see now the solar panels, the rectangular part.
And they're the 2 grey rectangles facing us. They're going to deploy once we separate the satellites and inject them onto their orbit. You get a better picture of them there.
Yes, you see them now again.
And they'll unfold like a butterfly coming
Tous les
out of
paramètres à bord sont normaux.
its cocoon. So we are now getting the separation of the second stage. We lit or ignited our third
Allumage
stage
bloc I,
engine.
extinction bloc A et séparation.
And we have confirmation of that we have ignited the third stage engine, which
Largage de la section arrière.
we do before we get rid of the second stage engine. That's a peculiarity of Soyuz. Here we go. Let's
Stabilisation correcte suite à la séparation.
take another look at that launch earlier this evening. That was 5.5 minutes ago nearly. Pretty impressive. Never get tired of seeing that.
Les paramètres propulsifs du bloc I sont nominaux.
There are various different bodies involved in the governance of the Galileo program. Sylvain, there's...
Yes, you're right. So ESA is the architect of the system. So we design and develop the system, and we are in charge of making it work. The GSA is the entity in charge of providing the services. And of course, the European Commission is the program manager.
Just to explain to anyone who hasn't seen a launch before, top right-hand side of the screen is what we call the trajectory. The white dot.
Les du lanceur sont conformes à l'attendu. Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
The white dot on that curve is the actual position of the launch vehicle. The curve itself is the planned trajectory of the vehicle. At the bottom, you can see we're coming up nearly heading towards 5 kilometers a second. This is a hugely important flagship project for all Europeans.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are launching 2 additional Galileo satellites. This opens up a new phase for Galileo, leading to a fully deployed constellation and to services. It is the result of a strong commitment to make Galileo a success. And as the new EU Commissioner in charge of Galileo, I share this determination. I would like to thank all of those involved in today's event: Arianespace, OHB, the European Space Agency, the French National Space Agency in Kourou, and of course the services of the European Commission. Additional launches are planned in 2015 and in the following years. Each of them will be another step forward for the program. Each of them will be key for Galileo. My objective is clear: provide early services by 2016 at the latest, and full services by 2020. My strategy is straightforward and focuses on 3 areas: deploying the infrastructure, providing services as they come on stream, and establishing Galileo on the market. And for this to happen, let's work, let's move forward. Thank you.
So some important strategies there from the EU, and the European Commission has taken over the role of funding Galileo. Our flight path takes us out. We're heading out across the Atlantic right now from the northeastern tip of South America, which is where we took off from.
La stabilisation du lanceur est conforme à l'attendu.
And we'll be heading out across Europe. We'll head out across Russia, down across China, Southeast Asia, heading south towards Australia, and that's where we'll be separating our satellites. And we are tracking the vehicle using ground stations as she flies over.
Yeah. Many of them. So we have a boat in the middle of the Atlantic, after the first one. Then we will have a station in Azores, Santa Maria. Then in Osaguel, Toulouse. And then we will lose visibility for some minutes, and we will arrive near Australia. Perth Station will take it at that moment.
Propulsion nominale du bloc I. Et décollage.
So what we've been talking about here is telemetry. The launcher is sending signals to the ground stations. And we've had the signal at the station in Perth. Here we have separation now of the third stage. It's burnt its fuel. We don't need it anymore. 9.5 minutes into the flight.
Extinction et séparation du bloc I.
And we're now starting the next phase of the journey. Frigate, the upper stage, is taking the wheel. You can see there the third stage moving away. And Frigate is that gold structure. It's got 6 spherical tanks and they're organised in a circle.
Yeah, 4 for propellants and 2 of them for avionics, a bit like we have in a cockpit of an aircraft. So for flight control systems, navigation, communication, and so on. And the satellites are attached using a special dispenser on top of it.
Frigate's getting ready to switch on its engine. It's in what we call the pre-burn phase. It's giving a quick burst of acceleration to push the fluids back in the tanks, and that's to make sure that there's enough propellant to ignite the engine properly. It's a little bit like when you're in a car and you put your foot on the accelerator. So here is the scheduled first ignition of the Frigate upper stage for its first burn. It's going to burn for just over 13 minutes, and Frigate's job is a very important one because Frigate's really has, as we said earlier, taken the wheel now. It's going to deliver our satellites to their drop-off point in space, and it's going to take it another 3 hours and 38 minutes to get there. We're going to have two main propulsion phases during that time, aren't we?
Yeah, yes, you're right. So the first burn takes us to what we call the transfer orbit. Yes, we wait for that, yeah. And then we will switch off the engine and we'll coast for about 3 hours and 15 minutes. And then we will have the second burn. So this one will take us to what we call the separation orbit, where we will relieve our satellites. So it should be on a circular orbit.
The Galileo constellation is being built and launched bit by bit.
In Kourou, elements of the next Soyuz launch are being assembled. Galileo satellites 7 and 8 will soon be sent on orbit. The Galileo program is solidly back on track for its deployment phase. At the end of 2013, Galileo successfully completed its in-orbit validation phase, when ESA tested the system extensively using a mini-constellation of 4 satellites. The first fixed position based on Galileo signals only was a historical moment. And the results of the test campaign on roads, at sea or in the air showed that the system design was good and sound, opening the door for the deployment of the rest of the constellation. Last August, the launch of the first full operational capacity satellite suffered from an injection anomaly, the 2 satellites being sent on an elliptic orbit instead of the circular one. Hopefully, after intensive work, both satellites have been recovered. They're now on a quasi-circular orbit where they are tested to confirm that they're working perfectly. Analysis is ongoing on their future use in the overall Galileo system. That allowed a green light for continuation, in particular the launching of satellites 7 and 8 here under preparation in Kourou. During this deployment phase, Europe will be procuring another 22 satellites. Of course, as the constellation is completed, Galileo's overall performance improves in terms of accuracy and availability. Therefore, Galileo's early services could start based on 12 satellites. When fully deployed, the Galileo system will be made up of a 30-satellite constellation associated to a major ground segment. The provision of improved navigation services relies also on the deployment of ground stations. The Galileo system is controlled in space from 2 centers, one in Oberpfaffenhofen, Germany, which mainly manages the satellites, and one in Fucino, Italy, where the navigation message is generated and uplinked to the satellites via a network of remote stations distributed worldwide. The satellites then broadcast the navigation signals, including the latest message prepared by the ground segment. During this deployment phase, both centers are being upgraded so they can act as backup for each other. With the successful in-orbit validation phase and the ongoing deployment phase, and now the 2 Galileo satellites launched last summer showing they work properly, Europe's Galileo program is well on its way. ESA and the European Union are taking another step forward in completing the Galileo constellation and offering navigation services to the users.
So, Arianespace and the Russian partners worked hard to resolve the issues from the launcher side, and you and your teams performed a very impressive rescue operation to recover the satellites.
I think you're right. Yes, sometimes we learn more from anomalies than we do from normal behaviors. Yeah. So the teams are a bit like pilots. You know, they are flying the satellites from the ground, and it's a very skilled job, really. And of course, we are very proud of them.
La propulsion du l'étage frégate est conforme à l'attendu.
So we are still on good parameters. So what they did, in fact, for that, they put the satellites into a safe configuration, and this was really an emergency. It had to be done very quickly, in a couple of hours. And then they found a way to raise the orbits with little fuel.
Let's see the details now of what actually happened to Galileo's 5 and 6.
Kourou, 21st of August 2014. At first, the Soyuz mission seems to go well. However, data analysis then shows that its 2 passengers are on a wrong orbit. Since then, the causes have been understood and Soyuz is back on duty. But for the Galileo satellites sent on an elliptic orbit instead of a circular one, solutions had to be found. The first tasks were in Darmstadt by the joint ESOC-CNES team in charge of the usual post-launch activities. The work turned into a rescue operation with crucial decisions to be taken right away.
So they managed to recover the orbit in a few hours, and within the visibility of the tracking stations, because I mean, when you go to the next tracking station, you lose basically satellite. You have to know what is the visibility from the next tracking station, and this you do only if you have an orbit reconstructed.
Once the satellites were secured, they could be transferred to the supervision of the Galileo Control Center in Oberpfaffenhofen near Munich. Then the best maneuver strategy had to be chosen and the recovery scenarios defined.
We developed together a maneuver strategy, and then we execute them. A number of maneuvers were performed. We are talking about 14 maneuvers per satellite.
Securing the birds in space was one thing, but at the same time, the ground segment overseeing all Galileo systems needed to be able to work with them. So it had to be sure that the operations in space were in line with the capabilities of the system on the ground.
And the good news is that we've now recovered the satellites. So we've taken it to where it was even a scenario which was well outside of its operational parameters, and now we've moved it into a place where they can be used and can be salvaged. So from that respect, we've saved the mission.
With all these maneuvers and reprogramming, the satellites are now operable on a corrected target orbit. This is already a great achievement because it is the first time that their type of OHB-built satellites are in space. So it's essential to be able to test them for real. Now, since they work well, it might be possible to fulfill the actual goal of this launch, the navigation mission.
We've done a number of studies at the beginning to see what would have been possible to reprofile this mission. It was our intention from the very beginning to recover the mission. So now we are in the process of discussion together with the European Commission what can be the operational usage of these satellites. At ESA, we are convinced that the satellites can be used.
Different tests in ESA labs and at manufacturers have checked the capabilities of the satellites. Even if they are on a different orbit, they could now contribute to the overall Galileo constellation.
I think we've learned a lot more about the spacecraft design for the FOC spacecraft, how it behaves in real life, in ways that wouldn't normally have been apparent if everything had gone perfectly smoothly.
The 2 Galileo satellites we feared lost should be able to work jointly with their space companions, and the building of the European navigation system can now continue.
Well, all credit to OHB, the prime contractor, and all the industrial teams who've quite clearly proven that they've built satellites that are robust and work.
Oh, well, you're right, yes. And also, I must say that Arianespace and the Russian teams did also an excellent job to identify and deal with the malfunction on Frégate. So they restored full confidence in this upper stage, and they've gone even further because they've used the experience to make some excellent improvements in their procedures also. So I think we have all learned a lot out of it.
Speed and altitude, we are 252 kilometers above our planet. 6,500, over 6,500 kilometers from our launch pad if we were to draw a line along the Earth, and we're flying at over 8 kilometers per second. Galileo is going to provide some very exciting applications all over the world.
Slowly but surely, the deployment phase of Galileo is underway. The European Space Agency ESA and the European Commission are building not only the satellite constellation, but also its associated ground segment. When the system is complete, it will consist of no less than 30 satellites, and Galileo's exploitation phase can begin. However, future users of Galileo will not have to wait until the exploitation phase, as early services should be available once there is a sufficient number of satellites on orbit. The first thing that often comes to mind when speaking about Galileo or its American counterpart GPS is transportation and car guidance. But Galileo services will extend well beyond road navigation, and these services will be implemented on different levels.
The most important one, of course, and the one that will be delivered first, is the open service. This is for the open public, for the mass market. We will have also with Galileo other services of added value, like the commercial service, that will allow us to improve the accuracy and the reliability of the signal. And this will be used for professional applications to obtain better accuracy on ground.
These commercial services should have great impact on European traffic, as the transport sector will be given better tools to manage their fleets of lorries, coaches, or even trains. Galileo services can optimize vehicle tracking, help avoiding congestion, and hopefully reduce fuel consumption. Furthermore, Galileo will also assist in the field of agriculture, thanks to what is called precision farming. Guided tractor systems have been shown to reduce driver fatigue, allow for ultra-precise tillage, or more precise distribution of fertilizers and herbicides. As much the impact Galileo might have on land, it's hard to underestimate the effect it will have on other domains such as maritime transport. Not only will it contribute to safer and more precise navigation of more than 50,000 ships on our seas, but it will also enhance detection of distress beacons and notification of rescue services. And those features can also be implemented on land, for instance in places with difficult access, such as mountains where helicopter extraction might be the only hope for people in need. Another crucial field for navigation services is aviation. Today, Europe already augments GPS with the EGNOS system. It's done by giving air traffic an extra reference signal with higher accuracy and integrity. With this signal, aircraft can rely on space-based navigation, notably during landing procedures. Soon, EGNOS will rely on both GPS and Galileo signals, a redundancy that will provide confidence and safety. Today, it's already abundantly clear that the services rendered by the European navigation programs will benefit and impact our activities. This system and its applications will keep evolving according to users' needs and will surely become part of our daily life.
Absolutely, and navigation is becoming such an integral part of our lives. Who'd have thought not very long ago nobody had navigation on their phones, and now actually everyone does. Let's turn our attention to this superb upper stage here, frigate. It was originally designed by the Russians as an interplanetary probe, and it was then adapted to fly on Soyuz.
Yes, you are correct, because it can switch its engine on and off up to 20 times. So it could take its passengers virtually anywhere they need to go. So that makes Soyuz ideal for launching constellations. And today we got 2 main boosts.
And it's an important flight for Soyuz because it's its 50th launch today. It was first launched on 2000 from Baikonur. That's when it was first adapted to fly on Soyuz. They had 2 qualifying flights that year, and then in the July, it launched a cluster for the European Space Agency. Now, some folk here may well remember those 4 satellites, they were bouncing around the magnetic field and telling us all about our magnetosphere. And they went off on two Soyuz flights in the July and August. And I remember because I was hosting the TV show. So that was memorable. We're coming up to the point where Frigate will switch off its engine. You can see there on the top right-hand side of the screen, if you look at the curve, we really are climbing into space now. Our altitude nearly 704 kilometres above the Earth. We're flying at over 9 kilometres per second. That's pretty phenomenal. Frigate has cut off its engine, and we're in the ballistic phase.
Confirmation de l'extinction de l'étage frégate.
That means we're travelling without propulsion. Galileo is named after the Italian astronomer who discovered Jupiter's 4 largest moons, Galileo Galileo. Nowadays, all navigation systems depend on accurate timing.
Although from a distance the Galileo constellation may look like a molecule with electron satellites and the Earth as its core, this atomic comparison only really comes into its own when one considers what lies at the heart of Galileo, the measurement of time. In fact, the Galileo system is one vast space clock, the accuracy of which is crucial to the quality of position calculations, and to ensure the success of this, Europe has developed what are known as atomic clocks. An atomic clock that deviates by 1 nanosecond produces an error on the ground of 30 centimeters, which, if translated to a second, makes an error of 300,000 kilometers, which means one might as well be on the moon. Hence the importance of reducing inaccuracy and the key role played by the clocks on board the Galileo satellites. The Galileo satellites are equipped with the best clock ever launched into space, known as the passive hydrogen maser. Maser stands for microwave amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. From the outside, the clock just looks like a large cylindrical case, but inside atoms are dancing. Dancing a waltz with such regularity that it's in fact the source of this extreme precision. The functioning of the atomic clock is linked to the behavior and the movement of hydrogen as it follows a predetermined course. Hydrogen molecules are channeled into a space where the molecules are split into 2 atoms that can be in 2 quantum states. States that can be differentiated by their colors, red and yellow. These atoms then pass down a long tunnel where they're sorted before continuing towards a huge cavity where they move in every direction. This is where the atoms are stimulated, excited, causing them to pass from one state to another, thus leading to the stimulated emission of microwave photons. Here they're orange. The frequency of this emission is absolutely stable and reproducible, and it is this accuracy and regularity that produces the atomic rhythm, essential to the services offered by the Galileo system. These impulses are then transformed into signals which are sent to Earth with a metronomic rhythm. All the satellites that make up the Galileo constellation will be equipped with these clocks, whose unchanging rhythm will enable ground receivers to calculate with extreme accuracy user positions, time, and speeds, data that is essential for a whole range of applications.
It's phenomenal when you think how far we've come since Galileo realised that celestial bodies provided a clock in the sky back in the early 17th century. Nowadays, our modern world is so dependent on accurate timing. I mean, it would be disastrous if our navigation satellites were turned off.
Absolutely, yes. Many things rely on accurate timing nowadays. For example, power lines, telecommunication networks, financial markets rely on real-time information systems and so on. This is why Galileo is so important, because it provides an extra means to generate reliable timing, and in complement to what GPS is doing today.
The satellites and their payloads are the result of highly skilled and complex engineering, as we can see. This is all thanks to the excellent teamwork between members of the industrial consortium led by the German prime contractor OHB.
The first pair of Galileo's full operational capability satellites, developed and built by OHB, was launched in August last year. By now, both satellites are performing excellently. Today, the next two satellites called Adam and Anastasia are ready for their launch. Galileo's FOC phase is being funded by the European Union. ESA acts as the design and procurement agent on behalf of the Commission. As prime contractor, OHB is responsible for 22 satellites in total. The modular and flexible design and altogether 7 production islands at OHB in Bremen allows a cadence of 1 pair every 12 weeks. OHB is proud to contribute to the European Satellite Navigation System, which will bring forth a multitude of useful applications for the benefit of the people all over Europe and around the world. Find out more about OHB as a leading space system company in Europe and see our vacancies on ohb.de. Galileo FOC Satellites by OHB.
Back to our flight. At the moment we're in the ballistic phase, we're coasting and we're actually rotating as if on a spit. It's called the barbecue phase.
Yes, it ensures homogeneity of thermal conditions around the satellites. So it keeps, in fact, the temperature even.
Because, of course, it gets very hot on one side and very cold on the other.
The other, yeah.
Yeah. Now, we've crossed the Atlantic and we headed out over northern Europe and Russia. We're now, I believe, flying... I think maybe over China, heading down towards Southeast Asia and Australia.
Yes. When we get close to Australia, we'll check in and with a tracking station in Perth.
And it's going to take us about 3 hours to get there.
Yeah.
We're taking a look here at a replay of our launch earlier on this evening. So we're going to take a break in our programme and we're going to be coming back to you shortly before we release our satellites. We had a perfect liftoff earlier and the first 3 stages flew perfectly. Here we go. We can see it again. This was 31 minutes, nearly 32 minutes ago. We're going to come back to you at 22:30 hours Kourou time. That's 1:30 UTC, Universal Time.
2:30 in France.
Okay, for you French folk there and other
Yeah,
Europeans
Toulouse,
watching us, people in Toulouse. So rendezvous back here at 1:30 European time, or Universal Time, I should say. We'll see you then. Welcome back. We are orbiting Europe's 7th and 8th satellites in the Galileo navigation constellation, and we are 3 hours and 45 minutes into the flight, and we'll shortly be releasing our satellites onto their orbit. I'm Katie Haswell, and joining me in the commentary box is Sylvain Lodo. Sylvain is the ground segment manager at the European Space Agency. Thanks for joining us again, Sylvain.
Good evening. It's a pleasure. Yeah.
So the satellites lifted off from the pad at 9:46 Universal Time on board the Russian launcher Soyuz.
Confirmation du deuxième allumage de l'étage frégate.
It was a textbook launch, indeed the 1,840th launch for Soyuz and the 11th flight from its home here at the Guiana Space Center. everything went like clockwork as Soyuz blasted off into the evening sky here on the equator. The boosters fell away just after 2 minutes. And we lost the
Confirmation de
fairing.
l'extinction de l'étage frégate.
We can see there the boosters falling away. And the fairing
Début des manœuvres d'orientation au profit de la
departed
séparation.
1.5 minutes after that.
The second and third stages burned for nearly 10 minutes. And then frigate switched on its engine and took reins for the rest of the journey.
And then we were able to see our satellites once we'd lost that fairing. There was the third stage falling away, and as you say, frigate then switched its engine on and took over the job of delivering our satellites. It's been flying around the world for 3 hours and 40 minutes or so. It switched its engine off for a coast phase during that time, and it's now switched its engine back on and has circularized its orbit. So we're in view of the tracking station in Perth. We're off the southwest coast of Australia.
Australia now, yes.
Which other stations are following the satellites, Sylvain?
Now from the LOCC in Toulouse, they will be using 3 stations. Hartbeespoort in South Africa. You have one other in Kerguelen, so north of Atlantica. And the third one in Dongara.
And Kerguelen is also known as the Desolation Islands.
Well, that's true, yes. It's quite far away.
So we are now going through what we call some people like to say the space ballet or the orientation phase. Frigate is getting ready to release the satellites, and it goes through a very precise and carefully planned set of maneuvers because we need to orientate the satellites correctly in order to set them on the right path. Tell us more about this injection attitude.
Yes, in fact, frigate will drop the satellites at an altitude of 23,500 kilometers. And this is a little higher than the final orbit, which is about 300 kilometers below that. And in fact, we've injected the satellites in what is the graveyard orbit for the Galileo satellites. So in case something goes wrong, so I hope not, of course, right now at least they will not pollute the nominal orbit.
And then you can drop them down into their correct position according to plan. So we're waiting now for the separation. And just to remind everybody, we do have a delay in getting our confirmations. It's perfectly normal. We see the key moments happening at the right time. And we get the actual confirmations of those milestones just slightly later. And that's because it takes just a little bit of time for the information to get to the range operations manager here at the Guyana Space Center. There he is, Joël Egalgi, this evening.
Confirmation de la séparation des 2 Galileo Foc M2, Sat7 et Sat8.
And he's just announced separation of the 2 satellites. Separated together simultaneously, we can see them moving away there with these computer-generated images showing us what's happening in space. So that's good news.
Very good news. This is now a critical moment for us.
What's happening? Who's monitoring this?
So now, well, in fact, the satellites are waking up by themselves in reality. So they will transmit a telemetry signal to the Earth. And once we've received that, well, we will know that they are healthy. And this is done by the LOCC in Toulouse. And then the satellites will go into an automatic sequence of activities. So they will point toward the sun, and they will try to recharge their batteries and deploying their solar arrays, in fact. And this is one of the first things they do. And this is very important because, of course, satellites need energy to carry out their mission. And there is a nice expression for that we call the breathing point.
The breathing point?
Yeah.
We're going to hear now from the CEO of Arianespace, Stefan Israel. So we're going to hear from him.
So, ladies and gentlemen, at the moment where I speak to you, we can confirm that the satellites have been separated and that we have acquired the signal. As you know, we want to take time to pronounce the final success of the mission. So what we had scheduled is 1 hour and 30 minutes. So we will take this time, maybe less, maybe more, we will see. But the first information I can tell you is that things are normal and are going in the right direction. So let's wait a little bit for cross-check information to make final verdict on this mission, but things are seems to go in the right direction. So let's come back in 1 hour and 30. Thank you very much.
So you heard it there. We are going to wait for confirmation, final confirmation of the full mission, the whole mission. We have several ingredients that we need, various acquisitions and information coming in from various sources, just to be certain that everything's on track. And right now it's all looking good. So we will be coming back in 70 minutes' time. In the meantime, we're going to show you a film because Galileo incorporates some extremely innovative technologies. They are developed by Europeans, European industries, for Europeans. And as we all know, satellite navigation is quite literally improving our lives here on Earth right now, everybody's lives.
What do a farmer driving his tractor, the captain of a large cargo ship manoeuvring in port, an environmental expert surveying forests, a truck driver transporting hazardous goods, and a banker trading commodities have in common? They all rely on satellite navigation. Satellite navigation goes far beyond guiding us to our destination in our cars. It allows farmers to use less fertilizer, ships to navigate safely, operators to run road networks, local authorities to manage infrastructure, power grids to access the extremely precise timing needed to manage lines, bankers to timestamp operations, and it even enables efficient wildlife protection. Europe contributes to making positioning more accurate, reliable and available through its 2 state-of-the-art satellite navigation programs. EGNOS, the European Geostationary Navigation Overlay Service, is Europe's first concrete venture into satellite navigation. Its geostationary satellites and network of ground stations increases the accuracy of existing satellite positioning signals, like GPS, while providing a crucial integrity message, informing users in the event of signal problems. Galileo is Europe's independent global satellite navigation system. It will provide highly accurate, reliable global positioning under civilian control. The fully deployed system will consist of 30 satellites and associated ground infrastructure and will be interoperable with GPS. EGNOS today and Galileo in the future can save lives, on land, at sea and in the air. Landing procedures using EGNOS enable search and rescue helicopters to land safely on helipads, like those next to hospitals, even in bad weather. And civil protection services rely on accurate mapping and positioning when responding to floods, forest fires or earthquakes. Satellite positioning will also save lives on our roads. eCall is a pan-European system that enables vehicles involved in a crash to call the nearest emergency centre automatically, and send the exact position of the accident, allowing emergency services to get there faster. Galileo will offer a global search and rescue service. It will complement existing systems and ensure better coverage so the distress signal can be picked up without delay. It will also increase positioning accuracy of distress beacons, in some cases from several kilometers to a few meters. While EGNOS and Galileo will be vital in case of an emergency, they can also play an important role in prevention and safety. Aircraft use EGNOS to make safe, precision approaches to smaller airports and helipads, even with bad visibility. And trucks transporting hazardous goods can be permanently tracked, so we always know where they are. Advanced driver assistance systems will combine sensor and satellite information, including Galileo data, to help drivers avoid accidents or warn of obstacles ahead. The maritime sector was one of the early adopters of satellite systems, and EGNOS and Galileo make navigation more precise and safer. Millions of farmers already rely on satellite navigation to reduce the spraying of fertilizers or pesticides and to lower fuel consumption. In the air, precise positioning enables more flexible approaches for aircraft, including curved segments that are substantially more fuel efficient and will reduce noise pollution. EGNOS and Galileo will help authorities track down marine polluters and protect environmentally sensitive areas, as well as protecting fish stocks from overfishing or marine poaching. Accurate mapping helps conservation authorities manage natural parks and forests, whilst guiding people enjoying nature. Knowing exactly where you are at any given time can improve quality of life. Accurate and reliable satellite positioning can help the visually impaired navigate more safely and warn them of potential hazards. And smartphones will use Galileo to power a range of applications. EGNOS and Galileo will enable improved air traffic management and access to airports, which means less delays, diversions or cancellations. While road and rail management systems relying on satellite positioning will help manage traffic to get you to where you are going faster. If satellite navigation is crucial today, EGNOS and especially Galileo will form the foundation for a range of new innovative applications in the future. Fairer insurance for cars, in-depth analysis for sports teams, warning systems for earthquakes, weather forecasting, mobile phone apps to streamline traffic, environmental monitoring, and even beacons to manage livestock will be able to access reliable and accurate positioning. Companies across Europe, large or small, use satellite positioning to streamline operations, saving time and money. It also powers lesser-known applications, like providing power and telecom operators with extremely accurate time stamping. This will generate substantial socio-economic benefits to Europe's economy and its citizens. Jobs and business are being created for companies of all sizes, while spin-offs coming out of the technology being developed are used by entrepreneurs and researchers outside the space industry. Farmers, bankers, surveyors, captains, conductors, pilots, firefighters, and European citizens from many walks of life will rely on EGNOS and Galileo to power services that enhance efficiency, safety, protection, and economic growth.
Quite remarkable when you think how these clocks in the sky affect our lives and what an impact they're having. There was a gentleman called Edward Hale who about 100 years or so ago imagined a brick moon where people would be tapping and sending signals down to navigators at sea. How right he was.
True, yeah.
So there are the teams in Jupiter. The control center here, the mission control center. We will be coming back to you again in about an hour and 10 minutes or so with final confirmations of mission success. But right now, everything appears to be going in the right direction. We have separated our two satellites. And we will be coming back to you at 3 o'clock, 1 minute past actually, GMT, that's Universal Time. I'll give you more times in just a second, but let's remind ourselves of that launch. This was 4 hours ago. Over 4 hours ago, we lifted off from the pad here at the Guyana Space Center on the edge of the Amazon rainforest on the northeastern coast of South America. The two satellites are now hurtling through space at about 9 kilometers a second, I believe.
Probably, yes, even a bit more.
Even
yes.
a bit more now on their target orbit.
Hopefully they are on the orbit.
Yes, we hope, yes.
We have injected them properly, yes.
And we're going to be coming back to you at 1 minute past 3 in the morning Universal Time, or Greenwich Mean Time. That's 1 minute past 4 in Western Europe, and 1 minute past midnight here in Kourou. You can really see the rainforest there. It's called the Amazon rainforest for a reason. It's been raining a lot over the last few days. But we were lucky today because the weather held out for us. The teams in the Mission Control Center monitoring this phase of the orbiting process. So just to recap, we are waiting for confirmation of the success of the whole mission, and we'll be coming back to you again in about an hour and 10 minutes. I'll just run through those times again. 1 minute past 3, and you can see it on the bottom of the screen there. Stand by for confirmation of mission success. Welcome back to our live broadcast. We're orbiting Europe's 7th and 8th satellites in the Galileo navigation constellation. The satellites have been separated. We've had confirmation of that, and we're now getting confirmation and looking for confirmation of the success of the whole mission.
Yeah.
Standing by now for Stefan Israel, the chairman and CEO of Arianespace, to come and talk to us. But judging by the applause, everything appears to be going well.
Yeah, it seems so. You're right, yes.
Stefan Lodo is joining me here in the commentary box. Stefan is in charge of ground segment at ESA. And the tracking stations, the guys and girls at the tracking stations are following us here right now, Stefan.
Yes.
Over now to Stefan Israel, Chairman and CEO of Arianespace.
Bien, mesdames et messieurs, vu l'heure tardive, vous me permettrez de m'exprimer en français.
Gentlemen, given this late hour, you will allow me to speak French. I'm delighted to announce that according to our onboard telemetry system, Adam and Anastasia have been safely separated on their targeted medium Earth orbit. It's a full success. It's a full success for Galileo tonight. So tonight it's very important for Arianespace because our raison d'être is to guarantee European governments and institutions independent, reliable and available access to space. And tonight we've carried out our mission. So it's a moment of great emotion because it's the resuming of launches for the Galileo mission. And on behalf of Arianespace, I want to thank many people tonight. I want to thank the members of the Independent Investigation Commission, starting with Peter Dubok, who is with us tonight, and he played a key role chairing this commission and leading it to the appropriate conclusions. Along with Peter, many people played a very important role, and I'd like to say a few words about our Chief Technical Officer, Edouard Perez. Edouard is a very discreet person. He's not looking for fame, but for the success of missions, and the success of this mission tonight owes a lot to the work carried out by Edouard, to his methodology and his demanding nature, because in our profession, we have to be very demanding. I want to thank our Russian partners, NPO Lavochkin and Roscosmos. It was a very important day for them because they also had a successful launch to the International Space Station with 3 astronauts, which is a proof that space brings down all frontiers. So congratulations to our colleagues from Roscosmos. So of course, last but not least, I am particularly grateful to the European Commission and to the European Space Agency, our clients for this mission. Of course, this return to flight is something that we built with the navigation program of ESA with Didier Favre and Jean-Jacques Dordan. And this is something that we built with the European Commission in a transparent and trusting dialogue with the Commission. So I want to thank Daniel Calleja Crespo with us tonight. And I want to thank Commissioner Bienkowska, because as she said in Brussels at the end of January, there is no launch without a risk. Any launch is a risk, but the biggest risk is to stay on the ground. So she took a risk, a measured risk, obviously, and tonight she realizes this was a good choice. So it's the resuming of Galileo's deployment tonight. There are many missions in the book. We have to launch 3 Soyuz and 6 Ariane launches. And for Arianespace, this will be an absolute priority. We want to continue deploying successfully this constellation. It is also very good news because, as we mentioned this morning, there was a huge work carried out by teams from ESOC and CNES to place back into a useful orbit the satellites that were launched on August the 22nd. And tonight we know that thanks to the work of ESOC and CNES engineers, these two satellites will contribute to the Galileo program. So that's the second good news today. I also want to pay tribute to OHB, our partner. Every 3 months, they provide us with 2 satellites. That's an outstanding success. So we'll continue deploying this constellation with OHB. So bravo, congratulations to all engineers in Bremen. I'd like to finish with these few words. Arianespace celebrated its 35th anniversary yesterday because it was set up after Ariane 1 flew on the 1st of December, and we were set up on the 26th of March 1980. So it's a beautiful celebration with this return in flight of Galileo, but we have many challenges ahead of us. One challenge is 2020 with Ariane 6 that we are looking forward to having, because this will be an outstanding launcher, and we played an active role in the decision that was made for this new launcher. And this will be also the launch of a new governance. We are ready for that challenge because this will be the governance of success. Now, one word for someone who is with us tonight, Michel Aimant. Michel, this is your last launch as Director for Launches at CNES. He has new adventures awaiting for him. He worked with CNES in the 1990s and has been a key partner for Arianespace for all the developments in the Ariane program. So thank you to all the teams. Thank you to the teams in the Soyuz program for Arianespace. Thank you to all our partners at CNES CSG, with whom launch after launch we capitalize on success. And we've seen tonight that we share information together. Thank you to CNES and CSG. Thank you to all ground engineers supporting us. With this second launch, we are on track to have a beautiful year. We expect a minimum of 11 launches. So it was a beautiful beginning of the year, and we'll continue on the same tracks. Thank you very much indeed. Good evening. Well, there it is. You waited for a while, so we wanted to share good news with you. The satellites are doing fine. They are in good hands, managed by the Toulouse CNES Operational Center. We have a perfect trajectory. At least the very first elements are extremely favorable. So thank you for waiting with us so late, and let's rejoice with this very good news. We have a beautiful team here. HBO people had a wonderful campaign. We were supported by CNES and CSG. Arianespace placed us on the right orbit. So we'll be back. We will be back as soon as possible to continue deploying our satellites, because we are in the deployment phase. Thank you again for staying that late. And I'd like to share a few messages that we received. Our friends and families in Europe, it's 4 a.m. in Europe, and they're all saying thank you. See you soon. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning I spoke in English. Allow me to say a few words in French. In these times of emotion and pleasure, I'd like to thank the entire team involved in this successful launch. All the engineers, technicians, all the colleagues who worked days and nights, not just today, but over over many months, more specifically since the Anomaly in August, to make it possible for us and celebrate this success tonight. I don't want to forget to thank Stefan, Israel, and Didier Favre, but I'd also like to thank our colleagues from OHB for their wonderful work. I'd like to thank our colleagues from CNES and colleagues from the European Commission who are here and worked very hard. It was very important for us. It was very important for Europe that we should be successful tonight. It was important because the Galileo program was challenged. And tonight, with this beautiful success, with a bit of suspense, because we were all wondering what was going on, but the quality of the satellites is excellent. The satellites are on the right orbit, so I think we made a decisive step forward in this program, which is a unique program for Europe, for European citizens, because as compared to other programs, Europe is building a strategic program that will contribute huge benefits, that will give us autonomous and independent access to space, and will allow Europe to continue on the path of research and innovation to offer new opportunities to its young people.
Saying that with the success of this mission, Galileo is now irreversible. Thank you very much. And with your permission, I would like to invite Mr. Marinescu, member of the European Parliament, to say a few words on behalf of the European Parliament, because the European Parliament plays a very important role, notably in the financing through the EU budget of Galileo, Copernicus, and the space programs of Europe. Mr. Marinescu, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for invitation. Congratulations, especially that this mission came after that incident in August. So it was a big success today. And the only thing that I want to say is that the European Parliament is a supporter. You will have a support. Galileo, all space programs will have a big support in the European Parliament. There are a lot of colleagues, not only me, that are supporting this activity, and they will do all the efforts to go on, to have everything that you need to go on with these missions. Thank you very much.
Well, the perfectly successful orbiting of these two satellites allows Galileo to be back on the right tracks, and this success will amplify because beyond Soyuz, we just qualified Ariane 5 for the launch of new satellites, so the constellation can be deployed more quickly. I want to thank all the teams from all the partners in this key program, the Commission, the European Space Agency, OHB, that built the satellites, and all industrial companies that worked on the program, Arianespace and their Russian colleagues with their Soyuz launcher, and CNES, which was present here in Guyana and present in Toulouse. They're the ones who acquired the signals and told us that they were on the appropriate orbit. It's a total success. On a personal note, this success is very important for me because it's the first one we have since the President of the Republic asked me to continue managing CNES, and I want to thank all the members of Parliament who supported this appointment. After the success of the Luxembourg conference that strengthened us, the years to come will be particularly interesting for CNES, and tonight I'd like to pay tribute to Michel Aymar, who, after more than 10 years as director of launches at CNES, I had known Michel at Arianespace before. I met him again at CNES, and after 10 years as launch director in CNES, he will face a new professional challenge. For 10 years as director for launches in CNES, he wrote the whole history of launches in Europe. 63 successful launches with Ariane 5. He developed the P-84 stage of Vega and many other successes. But the most important is probably ahead of us, because Michel has anticipated the evolution of launches and paved the way for the future by designing and offering Ariane 6, which led to the historical decision made in Luxembourg. So for all these successes, I suggest we dedicate this success to Michel and Marc. Thank you, Michel. And in conclusion, let's say we'll meet again with him for the first launch of Ariane 6. This is very dear to his heart, because I think you all understood that Michel can claim he's at the very origin of this launch. So once again, congratulations and thank you. It's late, thank you, and see you soon.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What an exciting day, what a happy day. I can say that as a manufacturer of satellites. So we have 2 satellites from OHB now in orbit. So 2 more than we had before, and they both work very well. So I can really say exactly according to the sequence which has been planned, they did all their tasks and now are deployed and moved their solar arrays towards the sun. So this part of the mission has been done already now for both of the satellites. And I think this is a good achievement now, especially as what I heard, the orbit is the correct one as well. And so I think this is a milestone for the further deployment of Galileo satellites. As you know, we have a contract over 22, so 18 are still to be launched. And the production is ongoing, so I think we can provide satellites as needed and as planned. And I'm looking forward to continue the production, also maybe some more, because 22 is not enough to make the system complete. And so I think this achievement is something which is not done by one party or institution alone. We work together from various sides, the industry, including SSTL as the provider and manufacturer of the payload for all 22 satellites, as well as various subcontractors which are involved, and of course a very engaged and very good team at OHB. But that's not all. From the industrial side, we can provide or we can do a lot to make good quality satellites, but the result at the end is a result of cooperation. And so I think it belongs to a success that the other institutions work together with industry. This means, in this case, the Commission, ESA, and some other consultants and other companies which are involved only by combining the efforts and the skills of all of us will make a satellite successful. And so I want to thank all who contributed to the success very much. And I think we can look forward for deployment of a system where we believe that it is worth to fight for, to make it complete and make it full operational in order to have another cornerstone of Europe's skills worldwide established. And I think we should go on the way we started. And of course, there are always things we can improve. And this we should do in the future because we now know how it works. We have the experience. All participants have the experience. And this might help us with this experience to make the remaining production, also the production of future satellites, more efficient. And that at the end, more efficient means a better price and less money for the taxpayer to spend for that. But this is a near future, and I think it will be possible, from our point of view, to deliver all the satellites needed for the system to be operational in 2020, which is, I think, the goal of the European Parliament and the Commission. So thanks again to all who contributed to the success. I think we have built very good satellites. They work very well, not only the two launched today, but also the pair which has been launched in August last year is working very well. And I think the payload also of the second satellite has been tested recently successfully, so that we can say, let's go on with the series. It's worth to support that and to do the job, a good job, as we did up to now. So thank you very much, and I wish this program all the best, and we are available to support this with all our power. Thank you.
Mesdames et messieurs, donc juste pour vous dire que nous reviendrons.
Gentlemen, I just wanted to tell you that we'll be back here in Kourou on April 15th. This will be the beginning of our campaigns with Ariane. We had Vega in January, Soyuz in March, and Ariane will carry 2 satellites, Torset for a Norwegian operator and Sigfran for the French Ministry of Defense, the French and Italian Ministries of Defense. So thank you for staying that late to share this moment with us.
So some very happy faces there. It's mission accomplished once again for Arianespace and for the teams at ESA. Galileo's FOC 7 and 8 are on orbit. They are healthy. They're starting their new lives in the skies. And huge congratulations to all the teams who've contributed to today's success. I think everybody deserves a very big pat on the back.
I think you're right, yes. Very well done.
Sylvain, and also very many thanks to you for joining me here in the commentary box. It's been a real privilege to have you here.
Yes, it was a pleasure for me as well. So I would like also to wish the teams on the ground all the best as they progress now with the job and up to the commissioning of the satellites and what comes after.
Absolutely. There's A lot of guys and girls there who've got their work cut out now over the coming weeks. So it's goodbye from me, Katie Haswell.
And also from me, Sylvain Lodo. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I wanna